Imagine walking into a room and feeling an invisible weight pressing down on you, a tension you can't quite name. You smile, you nod, you laugh along, but inside, something is quietly eroding. That feeling, that subtle unease, is often the result of one thing: disrespect. Not the kind that shouts or slams doors, but the quiet, persistent kind that chips away at your confidence, your peace, and your sense of self. Psychology tells us that our brains are finely tuned to social cues, to signals that indicate safety, trust, and belonging. When those signals are violated repeatedly, it triggers stress, anxiety, and a cascade of emotional consequences that most people don't even realize. What if I told you that understanding the types of disrespect that silently undermine us could be the single most powerful tool to protect your mental and emotional health? Today, we'll explore 5 forms of disrespect that you should never tolerate, not as a reaction to anger, but as a conscious, informed choice to safeguard your well-being and assert your self-respect in every interaction. Disrespect is more than just a breach of etiquette or a rude comment. In psychology, it is often a signal, an indicator that relational boundaries have been tested or crossed. When someone behaves disrespectfully, it is rarely random. It reflects underlying social dynamics, emotional states, or even unconscious patterns that can affect both the person giving and the person receiving it. Our brains are wired to detect threats, and social disrespect activates many of the same neural circuits as physical threats. This is why repeated experiences of disrespect can create a persistent feeling of unease, tension, or even fear, despite the absence of overt aggression. Understanding disrespect as a psychological signal allows us to see it not merely as an inconvenience, but as valuable information about the health of our relationships and our environment. Psychologically, when disrespect is encountered repeatedly, it can trigger stress responses in the body. Cortisol levels rise, heart rate increases, and cognitive functioning can become impaired. This is not only a momentary response. Chronic exposure to disrespect can create long-term effects on mental health, including heightened anxiety, depression, and lowered self-esteem. It is also important to recognize that disrespect is often subtle and cumulative. It may appear as dismissive comments, sarcastic remarks, interrupting conversations, or ignoring boundaries. Each small act, when allowed to continue unchecked, communicates a deeper message, that the recipient's feelings, perspectives, and needs are less valid or less important. Over time, this repeated signaling can distort an individual's self-perception, leading them to question their worth or doubt their judgment. In clinical observation, individuals who tolerate disrespect often develop coping mechanisms that are maladaptive. They may withdraw from social interactions, become overly compliant, or internalize negative feedback, even when it is unwarranted. These behaviors are understandable from a psychological perspective. They are attempts to protect oneself from further harm, but they also reinforce the patterns of disrespect. The person delivering the disrespect learns that boundaries are flexible, and the cycle continues. Recognizing disrespect as a psychological signal allows for early intervention. It encourages individuals to reflect on the source and pattern of the behavior, to assess their own responses, and to take conscious steps toward protecting their emotional and mental well-being. Furthermore, understanding disrespect in this way shifts the narrative from blame to awareness. It is not solely about labeling someone else's behavior as bad, it is about decoding the relational messages embedded in interactions. By paying attention to these signals, individuals gain insight into the dynamics at play, the intentions behind actions, and the areas where boundaries may need reinforcement. Psychologically, this awareness empowers people to make informed decisions about how they engage with others. It can foster assertiveness, encourage self-respect, and even promote healthier communication patterns within relationships. Ultimately, seeing disrespect as a psychological signal transforms it from a source of passive frustration into a tool for self-protection and personal growth. It allows individuals to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, to recognize patterns before they become entrenched, and to cultivate social environments that reinforce respect, dignity, and mutual understanding. By tuning into these signals, one not only safeguards mental health but also strengthens the foundation for healthier, more balanced relationships. Boundaries and self-respect are foundational elements in maintaining psychological and emotional health, yet they are often misunderstood or undervalued in daily interactions. From a psychiatric perspective, boundaries are not arbitrary rules imposed to control others, they are internal signposts that communicate to ourselves and to others what is acceptable, safe, and necessary for our well-being. When boundaries are respected, they create a framework for healthy relationships, reduce stress, and support a sense of autonomy. Conversely, when boundaries are ignored or violated, the consequences ripple through one's emotional and cognitive processes, often resulting in chronic anxiety, resentment, and diminished self-worth. Understanding and asserting boundaries is, therefore, an essential act of self-respect, a conscious acknowledgement that one's feelings, needs, and personal space matter. Psychologically, individuals who struggle to maintain boundaries often do so out of fear of confrontation, fear of rejection, or fear of social isolation. This fear can lead to a pattern of over-accommodation, where one consistently prioritizes the desires or comfort of others over their own. Over time, this creates an internal environment where self-worth is contingent upon external approval. Disrespect becomes not just an external experience but an internalized narrative, reinforcing a sense of inadequacy. From a clinical standpoint, these patterns can contribute to depression, anxiety, and even identity diffusion, where individuals lose clarity about their own values, desires, and limits. Recognizing boundaries as an essential psychological tool helps individuals disentangle their self-concept from the opinions and behaviors of others, fostering resilience and emotional stability. Setting boundaries also functions as a preventative measure against recurring disrespect. When a boundary is communicated clearly and consistently, it serves as a behavioral marker for others, signaling what will and will not be tolerated. Psychologically, this creates predictability in social interactions, which reduces uncertainty and stress. It also engages a feedback loop in the brain where self-respect is reinforced. The act of asserting limits validates one's worth, which in turn strengthens the capacity to respond appropriately to future challenges. In therapeutic practice, individuals are often guided to distinguish between healthy assertiveness and aggression. Assertiveness respects both one's own rights and the rights of others, whereas aggression seeks to dominate or control. Maintaining boundaries within the framework of self-respect is inherently assertive, promoting both personal well-being and relational integrity. Importantly, boundaries are not static, they evolve based on experience, context, and emotional growth. The process of defining, communicating, and adjusting boundaries is a deeply psychological one. It requires self-awareness, reflection, and sometimes the courage to withstand temporary discomfort or pushback from others. However, the long-term benefits are profound. Individuals who consistently uphold their boundaries report higher levels of self-esteem, lower levels of interpersonal conflict, and a greater sense of agency over their lives. From a psychiatric perspective, these outcomes are essential for emotional regulation, cognitive clarity, and overall mental health. Self-respect is the internal compass that guides boundary setting. Without it, boundaries may exist superficially but lack the force necessary to influence interactions. With self-respect, boundaries become both a shield and a shield against behaviors that undermine well-being, and a signal to others that one's values, emotions, and time are worthy of acknowledgement. In essence, the cultivation of boundaries and self-respect transforms one's social environment. It empowers individuals to navigate relationships with confidence, to disengage from toxic interactions, and to create spaces where dignity and mutual respect are the norm rather than the exception. By integrating boundaries and self-respect into everyday life, one develops not only a defense against disrespect but also a framework for personal growth and emotional resilience. In doing so, individuals are no longer passive recipients of others' behaviors but active architects of their social and psychological landscape, cultivating interactions that nurture rather than diminish their sense of self. In the complex landscape of human interaction, disrespect is more than a fleeting inconvenience, it is a signal, a boundary violation, and a reflection of the relational patterns we tolerate. Understanding its psychological impact and recognizing the forms it takes is not an act of arrogance or defensiveness. It is an act of self-preservation and self-respect. By setting clear boundaries, asserting our worth, and refusing to tolerate behaviors that diminish our dignity, we reclaim control over our emotional and mental well-being. Remember, disrespect tolerated is respect diminished, not just in the eyes of others, but in your own mind. Choosing to stand firm, to protect your inner world, and to demand the respect you deserve is not just a response to others, it is a declaration of your value. Never forget, the way others treat you is a reflection of their character, but the way you respond defines yours. Protect your peace, honor your boundaries, and never compromise the respect you owe yourself.